Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are really focusing on a leadership trial by fire, and that is navigating major organizational change. Whether you're leading a team of 5 or, a fleet of 50, change is coming faster than ever.
And we're tackling this challenge through a really fascinating high-stakes lens, the South African transport industry. We've been analyzing an advisory source from Greystride, a firm that specializes in helping these businesses transform and often under extreme pressure.
Right.
What's amazing is how universally applicable their blueprint is, even if the sector itself is highly specialized.
Absolutely. When you look at the challenges these transport operators are facing right now, you realize change isn't optional. It's mandatory for survival.
It is. I mean, you're talking about nonstop rising operating costs
Margins that are tighter than ever.
and a chronic, very difficult to manage driver shortage. Then you pile on rigid compliance pressures and customers who demand basically perfection in a totally unpredictable market.
That combination just creates an environment where, real structural change is the only way to avoid going backwards.
Exactly. The sources show that the leaders who succeed, they treat this period not as a crisis to endure, but as a strategic moment to redefine what stability even means for them.
And that's our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
To unpack 7 really practical, crucial steps for leaders. These steps are designed to turn that looming threat of change into a real opportunity to build resilience.
hmm
We want to give you, the listener, the exact roadmap to move forward with confidence,
Okay, so let's begin with step 1. This one addresses the most common and probably most expensive mistake organizations make right out of the gate.
which is focusing on the symptom, not the source. You see tight cash flow or frequent breakdowns, and you just rush to fix the thing you can see.
Exactly. Step 1 is understand the real problem. If your cash flow is tight, okay, the symptom is the lack of money, but the root cause might be poor invoicing, maybe excessive empty kilometers, or a totally broken fuel control system that's just leaking cash.
You're not trying to patch a hole. You need to figure out why the hole appeared in the first place.
That's it. So how do you do that? Well, you need to conduct a kind of forensic review across the entire operation. This means rigorously auditing your numbers, your processes, the communication flow between your workshop and dispatch, driver behavior, all of it.
Because if the change isn't targeted at the actual root cause, the planning inefficiency or whatever it is, it's just going to be disruptive without actually being effective.
Exactly. That structural clarity is key. If you don't know the exact mechanism you're trying to fix, you can't lead people confidently through the fix. You just sound like you're panicking.
And that destroys trust.
Precisely. Which brings us right to step 2. Communicate with honesty and consistency.
This step feels so simple on the surface, but I think the complexity is in that information gap you see in any major organizational shift. If leadership is vague, people just invent their own worst-case scenarios. And that fear, it paralyzes action.
It absolutely does. Assumptions are the enemy of momentum. In a high-pressure environment like transport, employees are already worried about job security. The source highlights that leaders must provide predictability, not just, information dumps.
So what are the non-negotiable points of communication they recommend?
There are 4 essential pillars, and they have to be repeated consistently, not just said once in a meeting. First, what is actually changing? Be specific. Second, why this change matters. Link it directly to the company's survival and its future.
Okay, so what and why?
Third, how this change affects specific teams and individuals. And fourth, and this is the one that often gets forgotten, what support will be available to help them transition.
So it's not enough to say we're upgrading software.
No.
You have to explain we're upgrading our software because the old system is causing delays that are costing us 2 major clients a month, and we will provide 3 weeks of one-on-one training to make sure you succeed.
Exactly. When your people feel they have the tools and they understand the purpose behind the hardship, they feel invested. It builds that trust you need.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the real problem and built a foundation of trust. That naturally moves us from passive communication to, active involvement. Let's look at step 3.
Step 3 is where the magic happens. Engage your people early. The principle is fundamental. If leadership imposes a change, you generate immediate resistance. But if you design the change with the people who live that process every single day, you create ownership.
That requires leaders to step back and admit they don't have all the answers. which has to be difficult when the business is under threat.
It is, but the payoff is massive. Just think about who holds the critical insights. It's not the CEO looking at a monthly P&L, it's the drivers, the shift planners, the workshop staff, the administrators. They see the inefficiencies that management will never see.
But isn't there a risk that engaging them early just opens the floodgates to complaints that you can't possibly address?
That's a common fear, but it's about how you frame the request. You're not asking for a wish list. You are asking for solutions to specific operational bottlenecks.
Huh.
For example, a driver might point out a loading procedure at a client's warehouse that adds 2 unbillable hours to every single run.
Something leadership would never see.
Never. But they can take that specific insight and negotiate with the client or just change the route planning. That's actionable.
Yeah.
Or a planner could show how better real-time data lets them cut empty kilometers on backhauls because they're seeing capacity immediately, not 8 hours later.
And that's pure profit right there.
It is. Or a technician might identify that the parts process for one specific component takes 3 times longer than it should, causing chronic preventable downtime. Engaging those people early transforms them from resistors into internal consultants.
Right, because when people feel heard, they actively support the solution. And once you have those human insights, that moves us to step 4, strengthening your systems and processes.
Right. And often, businesses that grew fast in the good times find their processes are now a liability. They're basically running a mid-sized fleet on small fleet systems. When market pressure hits, those outdated systems become crippling bottlenecks.
We've all seen it. A system that needs 3 different departments to physically sign off on one document, or an invoicing process that takes 45 days. In a margin-sensitive business like transport, that instability is just fatal during a period of change.
It is. The source provides a critical operational checklist here. You need to review systems for fleet maintenance planning, shifting from reactive repairs to proactive scheduled maintenance. That's huge.
Proactive, not reactive.
You have to tighten fuel controls, optimize dispatch, professionalize customer communication, streamline workshop workflows, and, crucially, gain control over your cash flow management and all your compliance documents.
That small procedural shift from reactive to proactive maintenance, that alone can add so much reliability and cut costs. It stabilizes the fleet when the rest of the business is in flux.
And that's the key takeaway. You don't always need a total revolution. Small, targeted refinements in your core processes provide the stability you need to support the bigger organizational change. Systems are the scaffolding that holds it all together.
Okay, with the team engaged and the processes mapped, let's move on. This is where we validate all that operational effort. Step 5, build a data-driven mindset.
This is maybe the most fundamental shift required for resilience in a volatile industry. In a high-stakes, low-margin environment, decisions based on gut feeling or, assumptions are just too expensive. Data gives you confidence.
The resistance here, I imagine, is often psychological. Leaders are used to operating on intuition. It takes courage to look at a spreadsheet that tells you your 20 years experience might be wrong.
It takes discipline, and the source makes it clear you don't need highly complex, expensive software to start. You just need basic reporting that gives you clear visibility.
So what are some of the simple but meaningful indicators that a transport operator should be tracking?
They listed 6 that provide immediate strategic value. First, cost per kilometer. That's the true fundamental measure of efficiency. Second, fuel variance. Not just fuel consumption, but the variance between what you expect and what you actually use. It's a powerful indicator of theft, maintenance issues, or even just aggressive driving.
That's a powerful tool for operational control. What else?
Third is load profitability. In a tight market, this is your true north. You have to know which lanes and which contracts are actually making you money.
And which one's just noise?
Exactly. Fourth, downtime per truck. Fifth, on-time delivery metrics, which directly impacts keeping your customers. And sixth, revenue per lane.
And the power here isn't just knowing the numbers, it's using them to pivot, right? If the data shows a route is a money loser, you have the facts to either change the client relationship or just drop the lane.
Data shifts the conversation from opinion to strategy. And that brings us to step 6, which turns that data-driven reality back onto the leader themselves. Strengthen your leadership presence.
The leader is the ultimate source of stability during an organizational storm.
When the system is in flux and the data is pointing to difficult choices, everyone is looking up. They need to feel the leader's direction, their clarity, their consistency. Leadership during transformation is defined less by technical expertise and more by the ability to guide the business forward with courage.
It's about visible commitment. You can't launch a massive change from behind a locked office door.
Absolutely not. The source is very direct here. It says the leader must show up, ask informed questions, questions based on that data you're now tracking, make decisions, don't waffle, and most importantly, set clear expectations and support your people through the difficult parts.
Because if the leader seems hesitant, or worse, disappears when the pressure is on, the whole organization feels that anxiety. The transformation will fail. The leader is the model for resilience.
That consistent modeling sets the tone. If you are transparent about the challenges and confident in the plan, the team buys into the vision. You absorb the shock so the teams can execute.
Clarity, consistency, and courage. Okay, that brings us to our final step, step 7, which addresses the reality that even the most confident leader has blind spots.
Step 7. Get expert support when the stakes are high. The reality of the transport industry, especially in tough economic regions, is that it is just incredibly unforgiving. One cash flow mistake, one major operational flaw, it can be irreversible.
So getting outside help isn't a failure of leadership. It's a strategic move to reduce risk when margins are razor thin.
It accelerates the process and de-risks the transformation. An experienced advisory firm helps fleet owners see those critical blind spots that internal teams might overlook just because they're too close to it.
And what are the main benefits they offer beyond just finding problems?
They focus on immediate stabilization. They help address cash flow issues quickly, they strengthen your financial position, and operationally, they can import best practices right away, which shortens that learning curve. They help build that protective roadmap for the transition, and maybe most importantly, they reduce the immense stress that often overwhelms leaders who are trying to do this all alone.
This entire 7-step framework really is a synthesis of strategy and psychology. It reframes this mandatory change as a massive opportunity to take control, not a disaster to survive.
And that's the bigger picture. This is a time to optimize, not just retrench. By forcing yourself through this structured process, you come out the other side with a business that isn't just surviving, but is fundamentally more resilient, more stable, and really positioned for long-term profit.
But it demands courage from leadership. The courage to ask hard questions, to involve people in the messy process, and to trust the data, even if it contradicts what your gut is telling you.
And that confidence is what translates into success.
As we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave you with one final thought. It builds on that critical interplay between people and systems that we discussed. Since the goal is long-term stability, don't just ask what process or system needs fixing first. Instead, ask who in your organization, whether they're a technician, a driver, an admin clerk, who holds that critical, untapped insight that could completely revolutionize that fix. That person is the real hidden key to unlocking your business's next stage of growth.
That's a question every leader should be asking today.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into organizational resilience. We hope these insights help you drive your business forward with confidence.